There's a huge expansion in the power to broadcast instruction. My co-founder Martin and I launched today Crowdmark, a system that amplifies human capacity to evaluate student work to arbitrary scale. Grading is serious business. It takes a lot of work by teachers, but from the small research seminar with 5 students to a K-12 classroom, to a first-year university course, to a massive online course, to a national standardized exam, to an international standardized exam, Crowdmark helps educators grade better. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to show you a scenario for using Crowdmark from the perspective of one instructor. Now, there's a lot more versatility in the platform that I'll highlight later on in my presentation. So here you see the sign in, and let's suppose that I sign in. So when I sign in, you'll see that there's one exam sitting there, Launch EDU, we were practicing. Let's create a new exam, let's call it Math Exam. And then when I do that, a new exam shows up. When I click on that icon for Math Exam, I enter into a dashboard that allows me to create an exam. To create this exam in the current version of Crowdmark, I need 2 pieces of information from the instructor. The first thing I need is an exam template, a PDF file. The second thing that I need is the roster of students in the class. In the future, we'll integrate with school information systems and learning management systems, so these steps will be more automated, but right now let's walk through the process. So, I grab an exam template. Here's what an exam template looks like in mathematics. It's a PDF file. And then I upload this exam template into Crowdmark, and Crowdmark churns and processes and says, hey, I've got the exam, thank you. Next, the second step in the process asks me for a CSV file with the list of student emails. And I upload that file, and Crowdmark processes, and then Crowdmark generates a new version of the exam template that looks exactly like the exam template that was uploaded, with one crucial difference. On every page, there is a uniquely addressable QR code in the corner for every student across the entire corpus of the exam. Now that document is printed by the instructor or by the instructor's staff and then handed out to the students, and the students write the exams. And then the exams are collected by the teacher or by the teacher's staff, and the corners are cut off, and it's run rapidly through a photocopier scanner. Or in other scenarios, a mobile phone device is taken out, and you take photographs of all of these pages, and so we capture all of the exam images that the students have written into digital JPEG images, and then those are dragged and dropped into Crowdmark. And when that happens, Crowdmark starts processing and is reporting in these bars here, hey, we see that page, we've got that code, thanks a lot. And after a while, all of the exam images that the students have written arrive in Crowdmark and are sorted into a database and are prepared for marking. So after this process has completed, Crowdmark returns the instructor to the dashboard, and then on that dashboard, there's a toggle that says, let's start marking. When you click Start Marking, you're presented with the grid that you see right now. In this grid, let me explain what you see. Every row represents the 4 pages in this exam written by student number 1, then student number 2, and so forth. And this grid can be extremely tall to the thousands. Right now, you'll see that the second tile in student number 1 is highlighted. If I click on that tile, then Crowdmark instantly takes me to that student's page 2 on that exam with the QR code and the writing that that student has created. You'll notice in the right side of the view, there's a large area called Unmarked. Everything is iPad compatible, but if I click where it says Unmarked, then a marking dialog box jumps up, and I can assess that particular student's work with a score. Let's suppose that we score this one with a 10. I can also give a formative assessment comment by clicking on the comment button, and then a comment field jumps out. Now, normally when I'm paging through a 14-page exam, I want to look at page 3 and then move the exam over and then look at page 3 again on the next students, and there's a lot of paper shuffling. But with Crowdmark, using the compass rose, I can move vertically down the column and move from this question 2 in this exam for student 1 to question 2 in the next student in the next exam. So I'm switching down the column rather than across the exam. Suppose I score this student with a 6, and the third student with a 7, the fourth student with a 5, let's say, and the fifth student with a 3. And maybe the next exam page turns out to be blank, or maybe I suspect that there's a plagiarism issue, or maybe I expect that there's some cheating issue on this page. I can then flag it, which raises the attention of the marking team or that teacher to return to that exam and look at it again. And then when I return to the grid, I can see my marking history. This grid also updates if I have a team of markers in real time, so one column could be analyzed by someone in the Philippines, while another column is analyzed by someone from Indiana. After the exam is completed for marking, this is what it looks like, and we still have 2 exam tiles that require some further consideration. One doesn't yet have a score, it just has a flag. Another has a flag, but it is indicated that it has been scored with a 3. That's an indication of how the marking workflow works inside of Crowdmark. Now, we're building another layer, actually 2 other layers, on top of Crowdmark, and they should be ready before the academic year 2013-2014. The comments that are provided will soon have a social layer. So students, or optionally parents and students, or others in the teaching team can respond to the formative assessment feedback that have been given by a marker. And in this way, there is a new path for conversation around the student's work and around the assessment that has been given by the marking team. Crowdmark has tremendous benefits. Let me highlight a few. It saves districts and governments millions of dollars. It collects new and interesting data streams that can be leveraged to improve student outcomes. It creates a longitudinal portfolio of all of the students' work. So if in March of the academic year you identify a student that has a learning disability, you can return and look at all of the work that that student has done from the beginning of the academic year or prior years or years before that and see, with the new understanding that you've learned today, how that student has been functioning in their past work. So in this way, the past comes to life in the future because of access to the portfolio. Also, the comments and feedback are much more rich because we can add hyperlinks instead of scrawled red pen in the margin. Okay. We have used Crowdmark in a large-scale deployment with the Canadian Mathematical Society. We formed a partnership with 8 Canadian universities, and we used 150 markers together on one exam. So it's not just one teacher working on one exam. We carried this out in half the time compared to the earlier year's red pen on paper effort, and this validated interest in universities. We've also used Crowdmark in an elementary school setting where the teachers have very nice things to say. So one thing that the teachers say is that it's simply the future of marking. They also report that they carried out the assessment almost 10 times as fast as they did in the red pen effort. And they also forecast that this is just leaps and bounds better, and another wrote further and explained how millions of dollars can be saved. So we are rolling out Crowdmark for academic year 2013-2014 for instructors and institutions under a subscription model. And Crowdmark creates new markets for education, new ways for labor assessment and so forth to be carried out. And I've got 2 slides left. What have we learned? We've learned that teachers will scan papers, that they appreciate good design. Institutions want to save money with this type of platform. And what we need are content and technical partnerships. And we're also looking for a Series A investment. Thank you very much.
Well done. And you can start the 7 minutes for question and answer. Okay, feedback and concise questions and concise answers.
It's really great when I have an objection in my head and then you answer it in one more slide.
What was that?
That I was like, teachers are so overloaded with time. Why would they scan each one of these things with a cell phone or buy a scanner of some and sit there? But I think you answered that. So congrats.
Great. More feedback?
So James, you are one of the more credible people in this space that I've met. You're a professor, and I know this because I had dinner with you at the Tuesday night speakers dinner. You're a professor. You graded these papers by hand. You know this problem inside out. You know, in terms of pitching investors, I would be working hard to show that credibility early, and you got to watch out when you sort of show a slide that has like a big $60 billion problem number on it. I know everyone always says, hey, you got to show VCs, you got to show big numbers to make them excited because they only want the $1 billion thing. But if you show a number like that, you got to explain it. Otherwise, the investor BS detector goes up. Even angel investors,
just as
really
disclaimer, they were instructed to do product demos and to leave out a lot of the sort of background information because we only have 6 or 7 minutes per, to do that and back end that into the Q&A session.
I'd love to back up those numbers with any VCs that would like to talk about it.
Yes.
There you go.
Perfect.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question and comment. The question is, you showed an example of sort of a single problem page and identifying the single problem with a QED code. What about, longer exams that have, a whole lot? Are you going to do a single QR code for every single problem of an exam? And the context for this is obviously one of the challenges many American schools face is thinking about how they're going to grade Common Core assessments when those are available, and there's a lot of concern about the cost of grading those. So if you can make any linkages to, whether you have applicability in that instance as well.
Sure. So the 2015 plan for the Common Core, which introduces subjective assessments, is a perfect inflection point for this technology. We provide the teacher or the school board the opportunity to put QR codes on every page in the entire corpus of the exam. And that makes every page referenceable inside of our database. So it absolutely works in the scenario that you're anticipating.
And again, it's per page, but not per problem. Is that correct? I mean, presumably you've got some pages that have multiple problems on them.
That's right. So it's per page, but then I could have multiple evaluations per page. So if I have a Hamlet essay, I can have one person in Indiana evaluate that Hamlet essay for grammar, while at the same time, someone in Wisconsin is evaluating that essay for content. So I'm looking at the page, but there can be multiple evaluations provided by the Crowdmark platform in viewing that particular page.
Awesome.
So I just have a question again. Have you tried this out with teachers?
Yes, we've run 2 large-scale experiments. The first in the post-secondary setting. We used it with 150 graders from 8 Canadian universities in November of 2012. And we ran an Ontario provincial exam pilot in the K6 setting of grade 3 students, or rather grade 3 teachers working in moderated marking team and grade 6 teachers working in a moderated marking team.
So how much professional development did you have to provide?
Zero. So we showed one teacher how to use the system, and we monitored the K6 experiment in a chat room. And the testimonial, one of them says, "I was borderline shocked at how easy this was to use without professional development." We are designing it in such a way that it doesn't require a lot of training.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, as we all know, teachers have some sort of like tech phobia.
Could you explain a little bit more about the actual scanning of the documents? And that's where I kind of lost you a little bit.
Sure.
If I'm a teacher at home, take me through the process. How do I do that?
Sure. So after the exams are printed and you hand it out to your students, and your students write the exams, you collect all the exams, and let's say there's corners in the upper, staples rather, in the upper left corner. You take it into your mailroom and use your big cutter and cut off all those corners. Now you've got a big stack of paper. And you put it inside of your photocopier, which has a scanner in it, I predict, and you run it through that photocopier at the same speed that you photocopy, and you capture all those images. And your scanner, I suspect, will email you a large JPEG file, a collection of all the JPEG files of all of those exam images. You drag and drop that on Crowdmark, and we take care of the rest and set up that grid for you to mark in half the time or in 1/10 of the time as you would normally do.
So does it work for grading essays?
Absolutely. It works wherever you require human beings to use their skills to make the assessment. If a human being needs to look at it, we provide the platform to scale that.
At what point do you think it starts saving time to do this step? If I had a classroom of 10 students and they had a 3-question exam, it feels like I could just go through that pretty easily. Notwithstanding like wanting to have an archive of it. So putting aside having an archive of it and that value, probably would be quicker to leave out the step of going to the scanner. What point does it, start to save time? Have you figured that out yet?
So it depends on the speed of your scanner,
Yeah.
I think quite a bit, and it also depends on the support. But for one teacher, I would say something on the order of 30 pages. If you have 30 pages to mark, it's faster to do it this way.
And the new scanners that have come out, the Fujitsu and some of these that do 10, 20 pages a minute, they're only $300, $400.
That's right. So this entire system could, most schools that have a Xerox or a Ricoh or a large scanner already have, photocopier rather, already have an industrial scanner in it. But in the classroom, you could have a Fujitsu ScanSnap and then ask the students as part of their hand-in step to scan it automatically into a directory that has a cron job that's automatically uploaded to Crowdmark. So we're going to try to work it in so that the students carry out some of the scanning step on their own, and in this way it doesn't add a new layer on the teacher.
Yeah, it might be actually really interesting if you got those Fujitsu scanners, which I just bought one for home in the office, that are unbelievable and they're so cheap. If you bought those $400 ones and actually had the system set up already, so you just send it, and it already has the authentication in it and automatically uploads it to that school's directory, boy, would that be powerful.
We're working on those kinds of things.
Oh, good.
One last question has to do with privacy, data privacy, which certainly in the U.S. is a big deal these days, right? Can you talk a little bit about how secure the student data is, what kind of encryption you're either currently offering, plan to offer, particularly if you're doing things like, mashing it up amongst diverse sets of graders?
Sure. So one response is the student to exam association takes place on the first page of the exam booklet. And that's a separate step entirely from all of the exam pages which are de-identified. So we don't know whose student is page 3 unless we know inside the database. Now it's known that if you know that a student is female or if you know that a student is Asian, it affects the marks that you give to those students. So by de-identifying, we have that benefit. Now the larger issue of privacy, I think, is an absolutely crucial issue, and we don't have all the solutions. So we have to talk with governments and school boards and universities to figure out exactly where that lies. And now in terms of security, it's built in a state-of-the-art way. It relies on the security of Amazon Web Services, which the FBI uses. So the security of the deployment is absolutely state-of-the-art.
Yeah.
But which privacy issues have to be parsed requires some work with our partners.
Yeah, work on you to get them on the right hosting company.
Yeah, put it on Rackspace. This way Obama has direct access to it. Right on the back. All right, let's hear it
Thank you
for
very much.
Crowdmark. Very well done.